Get on home, yeah. Get on home.
It is time, kids, once again for Snap Tackle Pod. I am Mick Shaffer of 41 Action News, joined by Dion Clisso of PrepsKC.com. What's going on? Dion, you have your phone in your holster by your side, right, at all times here?
Yes, as we record this Wednesday afternoon, if you haven't noticed, there's a talk of some weather on Friday, and so a lot of games are getting moved up. And the trend early on that we've seen are homecoming games because nobody wants the pretty girls in their dresses to be standing out in lightning and thunderstorms.
Listen, or the pretty boys out there.
Or the pretty boys.
We don't,
So we've got a lot of games, not a lot, we're under 10 right now on the Missouri side that have been moved to Thursday. But it's like a snow day, though, dude. Just hang around. They'll start to go. And once this one school district goes, the other one goes. I know that Blue Springs South has moved up to 5 on Friday. And from what I'm understanding in my insight into both coaching staffs, that maybe they're not very happy about that.
Neither's happy about that.
They'd rather play on Thursday and just kind of go through a normal day. And here's the thing with a Friday 5 o'clock start. You lose a certain segment of your people that are coming to the game because it's 5 o'clock. People don't get home until 5:36.
And you're still
6:30.
probably going to catch some of the weather.
And you're still going to catch some of the weather. And then there's people who maybe can go at 5 o'clock who say, well, I'm not getting out there and then have it roll in and have to run to my car and drive home in it and all that kind of stuff. So they'll just sit at home. So, not that high school football is about the gate, but a lot of it's about the atmosphere. And playing a game with hardly anybody there is not fun. I've been to a few games that were moved early or like on a Thursday or something like that. They were played in the afternoon and you go and it's just, and there's nobody there and it just has a really stale feel to it. And that's what's kind of funny because a couple weeks ago we had the weather moving on Thursday night and I know Shawnee Mission East and Lawrence were playing and Harold Wamsgans, who I do my radio show with, he went out and watched that 3 o'clock game because it's right by his office. And then he went on to it and he said he goes, you could hear the players, you could hear the plays being called. I mean, it was like there was nobody there. And high school football, any kind of sporting event, the atmosphere is as much as part of what's going on.
You're right. And, so we'll see. I've got big tailgate plans for the Mill Valley St. Thomas Aquinas game. They can't get interrupted on Friday.
If they move enough games, I may come over and tailgate and go to the game with you.
Come on over.
If they get it down to about 5 games, I'll just cruise over to Mill Valley on Friday night.
So how many games roughly so far that you've seen have been moved to Thursday night?
It's about 7 right now, and there was already 2 games on the Kansas side on Thursday night. So we'll see. Like I said, some of the smaller schools, it's tougher, and they'll stick there. But in the Suburban Conference, you've already got Staley and Lee Summit North. All the Lee Summit schools are out playing on Thursday night. Fort Osage, North Kansas City, Grain Valley, Winnetonka, Van Horn, who was an independent school, and Truman and Chrisman. So all the independent schools are playing on Thursday night. So the Kansas City, Missouri schools start at 6 o'clock, so they're already an hour before everybody anyway. So we'll see. I'm sorry, Gary. I haven't looked at the. I literally not trying to brag, but. Last night I worked until about 11:30, so I did not watch any of in the news to get any weather, and I've kind of been going nonstop for the last 24 hours.
I worked until 11:30, and I was on the news, and I still don't remember. But look. Right now we're taping this. It's only Wednesday, and there's always new data. I've learned there's always new data.
There's probably going to be new data that comes in 3 or 4 times while we're recording this. I would assume.
Yeah, probably so. So hopefully, just push that rain back a couple hours. The storm's back a couple hours.
And check PrepsKC. We always have a running list of these things, and I tweeted out when Liberty and Lee Summit North moved back this morning. I tweeted out, well, I thought we could go 1 week here, 1 week, one whole year without, because you get at the end of September, you're feeling kind of cocky, like we're gonna skate out of here without any weather, but didn't make it.
And like you said, once one goes, you kind of break the seal, right? And the herd follows.
Yeah, it's a snow day mentality. There's no doubt.
And a lot of times they don't get the snow days right. A lot of times you wake up, it's like sunny and there's nothing on the ground. The kids are staying at home.
The storm thing is a tough deal because you get out there and you delay a game and you're in and out and it's like 30 minutes every time the lightning is so close and it doesn't breed for a good fan experience. It doesn't breed for, and plus you got people sitting on metal bleachers and you shuttle them into your gym and it's a whole deal. Now that being said, moving homecoming from Friday to Thursday after talking with Tom Cruise is obviously not as easy as you think either. He was supposed to do 11:30, and he didn't get to us about 1:30. He said it took him 2 hours to just kind of get the nuts and bolts done of moving a game to a day earlier.
So have you found that more coaches would rather just move it back to Thursday than move it up in the day on Friday?
I think so. They're creatures of habit, and some of them have played. Here's the deal. So depending on where you play, you've played a C game on a Thursday or something like that. But the 7 o'clock time, the team meal, all those things are the same. I know that even talking to coaches on the Fridays when they don't have school, they hate that. Because the kids aren't in their routine and things change. And so I think if you just move it up a day, and heck, for some of the teams in the Kansas side, playing Thursday is not that big a deal, Shawnee Mission and Blue Valley and Olathe, because
it's a regular thing.
It's something you do at least once or twice a year. So, and some of the, there's some games here or there that get moved. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. And like I said, you check PrepsKC.com because that will be an ever-changing list, I'm sure.
Before we get to the big games this week, let's talk about some of the big games last week. I was at two of the ones you mentioned. It's funny, Friday night, I was there as a fan of Mill Valley and Bishop Miege, and then Saturday I went out and covered some of the Center and Van Horn action out there. And in both those games, the first chunks of them, I thought, okay, this is going to be a blowout.
Yeah.
And in both cases, teams came back and made for great games.
Yeah, you were texting me that the Valley was turned upside down.
I think
it was the text I got Friday night. And to be honest with you, I'm following about 60 games on Friday night, and when that one kind of rolled through, and I was like, "What? That's doing what?" And,
because it was 35-10 late in the third quarter.
To give you an idea what I do on Friday, depending on my staff, my staffing size of the Friday night. Sometimes I'm just kind of managing and kind of keeping an eye on all the games. So sometimes you're not paying attention. Sometimes I'm watching the Kansas games or I'm watching the Missouri games. And last week I was kind of managing, for lack of a better word. And when Mill Valley got down, was it 35-10?
35-10, and it was mid to late third quarter down that much. Yeah.
So I kind of had tuned that one out a little bit.
There were fans leaving.
And then I saw a tweet here or there, and then my sister-in-law who was following that game, and I said, "What's the score?" And then you texted me, and I was like, "Oh." But that's it kind of flipped really. Daniel Jackson took care of that for me.
Oh, my gosh. Well, and there's so many weapons right on the team, so many good players to try to avoid kicking it to. So Mill Valley tied it up with 41 seconds left. They went for a 2-point conversion, and it was great. The quarterback was yelling at the sideline for the play as the play clock's running down. They snap it to the running back. The running back runs to the right side, flips it back to the wide receiver. Wide receiver's left-handed, so he's going to his left, and he turns and finds a wide-open quarterback in the end zone to throw for the 2-point conversion.
They'd been working on that one for a while.
It was a great play. Everybody was going nuts, and then like 30 seconds later, the kickoff happened, and it was over. Daniel Jackson ran it, but they squibbed it. But it went right to him, and it bounced perfectly to him. And there's video of the people in the stands at Miege saying, get down, because they still had 30-some seconds left, and they can move the ball, obviously, in a lot of ways. And then after a while, I was like, no, don't go down. Just go score a touchdown. That's what he did.
Well, another game, and I forgot about this game, Lawrence and Gardner-Edgerton.
Yeah.
Lawrence scores a touchdown. Devin Neal scores a touchdown, an 80-yard touchdown run with about 4 minutes left. So there's still a chunk of the fourth quarter left. They trade punts. Gardner gets it back. They're down a point. They drive to the 33-ish with about 16 seconds left. They line up for a field goal with 11 seconds left. And I encourage everyone to go to PrepsKC on our podcast, the Call of the Week in our 5 from Friday feature. It's just on our podcast. You'll see Call of the Week. The Ryan Ragland, who, and I'm not. The call is so great because it's like they lost the 7th game of the World Series or something.
Yeah.
I mean, he just loses it and melts down. Kid kicked it 50 yards, but it went to the left, and just the emotion. And I've listened to it probably 15, 20 times since Saturday when I saw that on the webcast, and it's a great testament of the emotion of high school football and how adults can get wrapped up in it, even if they're just doing play-by-play for the local webcast or the radio broadcast. And so that's a great win for Lawrence.
It's a great win.
We talked about Lawrence, being like a Gardner-Edgerton, maybe a year away, but that's a huge win for them. And I know
you think their coach knows what he's doing, maybe a little bit.
That Rampy guy. There's a couple Rampies out there.
There are in the Sunflower League.
Yeah, so I think that they're definitely a team that's getting better and made a big statement there. And Gardner's still a very good team, and I like them a lot. They are battling some injuries right now, and I think that their coach told us going in that he knew that this is a for real Lawrence team, and they're ready to go. So those were two of the best games. And then on the Missouri side, you were out there on Saturday.
I was
for a part of it.
It's funny. I got lucky. For once, I got lucky with the weather. Usually, it's the exact opposite. I got out there for the first quarter of the Center Van Horn game, which they were playing at William Chrisman.
Yes.
So I shot that. I got enough highlights. Literally, as I'm walking off the field, they go into a lightning delay. It hadn't started raining yet. I get in my car. I start making the drive from Independence down to University Academy.
Yeah.
About 2 minutes into my drive, it just starts pouring on me, just unloading. And the whole drive to University Academy, I'm like, I don't know if they will ever have sports again. This is the apocalypse. This is the end, right? And I pull up into the parking lot, and all of a sudden, it just goes away. They were already in their lightning delay, and about 10 minutes later, or their weather delay, about 10 minutes later, they resumed their game, I think, at the end of the first quarter as well. So I was able to get a lot of their action leading up into halftime. It was Sweet Springs and University Academy.
Yeah, University Academy's down a little bit this year, but Sweet Springs, and we talk about, the PrepsKC coverage.
Are they in our coverage?
Yeah, they're in my coverage. Yeah, Sweet Springs about halfway to Columbia, a little bit more.
What towns feed that? That was my first time.
Well, Sweet Springs, the town.
It's just that one town.
There's obviously, you didn't go to the University of Missouri. You know all those little towns.
Well, listen, I know Concordia very well.
Yeah, well, Concordia is a good stop.
I've been to Street Fair and the beer gardens at Concordia several times.
The McDonald's at Concordia is always a highlight.
I know that. I know Emma over there. Yes. But I never covered a Sweet Springs event.
There's not much in Sweet Springs. I think they got a Sonic a few years back. Not when I was in college, that's for sure. That's why I never really stopped there. But but that's a program that had struggled for a long time, and they're, I think, 3-1 or 4-0 now after beating University Academy. Yeah. But the center game, Chris Ferrer, their tailback, who's over 700, almost 800 yards now.
I don't think he was tackled when I was there. I saw him score 3 touchdowns.
387, I think, against Van Horn, and had 3 touchdowns.
But good for the Falcons and making that a game. When I left, I thought it was going to be 50-0 final score, in favor of center.
You never know when teams go into a break, especially when one team's dominating another, how they're going to come out of it. And I talked to Brian DeLong, the center coach, and he said there was 2 things. They didn't come out of the break very well, and Van Horn really did some adjustments, and they've got it's a good team, and they've got good players. And he said they really played well after that. It was about they played one play into the second quarter, I think, basically, and it was 20-6 at that point.
Yep.
But no, that's a good test for both those teams. And Center's got Bolivar this week, which is 4-0.
They're a really good team. We've got Springfield stations asking if we're going to go shoot that game. So they're high on Bolivar.
Yeah, and we'll see. One of the guys who does the voting from down in Springfield said, I'm going to put them at number 10 in Class 4. And there's a lot of teams that are kind of in that mix at 10 in Class 4. Yeah. And I said, well, they're 4-0. They're legit. And he goes, no. He goes, I'm kind of wanting to see them play center so I have an idea of what they are. But that's center. That's 2 4-0 teams playing in the city this week. You've got Lincoln Prep and Pembroke Hill, both of them 4-0 too. And talk with Sam Konopka if they were going to move that game up. It's homecoming at Pembroke Hill, he said, but they'd have to change some flights, like the personalized jets that come in. And
I believe that.
He goes, we're not moving it. He goes, we stay on schedule. I was like, well, you got to be careful. You got that grass field, and
Oh, it's true.
The little high heels will sink.
That does factor into it as well. Who has grass and who has turf. Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, to tell you everybody I talked to for our show, our radio show this week, Tonganoxie, they got a new turf field, and he said they play. He goes, it's nice. We get a lot of use out of it, and we appreciate it. And he goes, it couldn't come, after a year that we played. He goes, we played 3 mud games, not ring games, just in pure mud, and those, those are fun. I've been on the sidelines for plenty of those and seen them, but at the same time, dry track is always good.
Yeah. All right, so you have a new article out on PrepsKC.com. It is the 2019 stats leaders through 3 games in Kansas and 4 games in Missouri. Let's start with some of these here. Arlen Bruce living up to the hype so far in Olathe North.
And they've kind of, after week 1, they've moved him more to the tailback, and they brought in a quarterback, and they're doing a little bit more than what I thought they were going to do. I thought they were going to be old school Olathe North and just snap it to him and let him run and that kind of thing, which is good because that's going to help him be healthy as the season goes on. He's off to a great start. And, Tank Young, he didn't even – they barely – they barely threw the ball their first week, or they barely ran the ball their first week. Blake Anderson, their outstanding quarterback, first-year starter for St. Thomas Aquinas, has come in, and he's a Nebraska commit for baseball.
Really?
And the Blue Valley coach, Alan Terrell, was telling me, he's like, oh, no, that guy, he goes, we said, okay, throw it over at the top. And he goes, and that's what they did. He goes, that kid can flat out throw it. And that opens up what they want to do. Now, there's going to be some games where they only throw the ball 4 times, and Tank Young's going to carry 20 for 200.
Well, he's only through 3 games, only has 33 carries. He's 4th in Kansas on this side in rushing, but he leads by far in average per carry, 13.3 yards per carry.
Yeah, so he's definitely one to keep an eye on. Arlen Bruce, of course, on the Kansas side is another.
Bryson Cobbins looks really good.
Yeah, the Tonganoxie kid.
Cooper Cunningham.
Cooper Cunningham's off to a good start. So, you see, it's kind of funny. You see a lot of smaller school names in the rushing categories a lot of times, and then you get to the bigger schools, and that's where the receivers and the quarterbacks are.
Yep, that's it. Over on the Kansas side, too, passing Ty Black from Shawnee Mission Northwest. I believe it's the coach's son, correct?
Coach's son, and that's a guy who's got over 300 yards rushing, too. I mean, he's close to almost 100 yards a game in rushing. He had 160 in the last game they played. He's a dual threat guy. They're a fun team. That's a team, and they're loaded with juniors and sophomores. Only have 1 or 2 seniors on their defense. They graduated a ton of players on their defense, and their defense is young. But they're platooning, and so none of those guys are going both ways. And that's a team to really keep an eye on this year and definitely into next year.
Absolutely. And leading the way on the Kansas side, Chase Torkelson out of Baser with 874 yards and 7 touchdowns through 3 games. That is a pretty good clip right there. Almost 300 yards per game.
Yeah, they've been behind a little. And so it helps. It's fun. That's one of those teams that when Rod Stahlbaumer got there, they were a run-heavy team, and that's what they had, and those are the kind of players. And then in the last few years, they've had more guys who could throw the ball, and they've done well there. They're at 1-2. It's kind of their worst start since Stahlbaumer got there. But he's one of those guys. He's going to look and see what he's got and figure out what they can do, and does a good job. But they're in that conference, the UKC, that's really competitive this year. Outside of DeSoto. DeSoto's injuring people.
Yeah.
71-0 over Turner. I felt bad for Coach Parks over there at Turner.
Wow.
And I know Coach King isn't running up the score. That's just one was got away.
Yeah. Receiving wise, we've got obviously a lot of the quarterbacks are going to have receivers that have big days, but Bishop is the combination of Daniel Jackson and Philippe Wesley. I don't think that can be beat in the city.
No, I think they're pretty good. That's a good crew for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ty Lindemann leading the way with 19.9 yards per catch at Shawnee Mission Northwest.
He's a dangerous weapon, and I've only seen him on a webcast, and Coach Wamsgons told me that he's just a special player. I mean, Ty Black is definitely the guy. He's the quarterback who makes things happen, but having Lindemann is a huge bonus for him.
Absolutely. And you talked about from center Chris Ferrer. Is that how you say his last name? He leads the way on the Missouri side in rushing at 195 yards per game, 11 touchdowns, 12 yards per carry.
Let's put it this way. He went 40 in his first game, like 48 in his first game.
Really?
And then about 85 in his second game. And then I think they've just kind of, they were figuring out what they had.
Wow.
And now they're feeding him, and he's pretty special. And Coach DeLong said he's really a fun guy to coach. And he's had some pretty good backs there the last few years. So
absolutely.
They tend to churn out some pretty good tailbacks.
A lot of smaller schools on the rushing side. On the Missouri side, you have Center leading the way, a kid from Excelsior Springs, Harrisonville running the ball, Kearney kid, he's going to be up there, and Tyler Paul from Lathrop. 15.5 yards per carry for Lathrop. He's only got the ball 37 times. Maybe give it to him a little bit more.
Well, he's probably on the bench a lot in the second half. They're killing people.
That's the whole deal. Same with Aquinas. They've been routing dudes, and Tank Young's been sitting most of those second halves. All right, passing. Platte County, they're always going to have a quarterback, right, that just leads the world in yards.
Yeah, they definitely they know how to do it, and this kid's a junior, so they'll have him for 2 years.
Chris Runke.
Runke, that's how you say it. And it's they do such a good job of coaching the passing game. And I don't know if this is really one of their best teams they've had, even in the last 3 or 4 years. But they're in a good position. Their district is kind of wide open. Smithville and themselves and Kearney and Excelsior are all right there. Van Horn's in that district as well. And then the other district has Green Valley. Harrisonville's down. Warrensburg's not bad. But when they when they come out of that quarterfinal, when District 7 and 8 play each other, the winner of that is matched up with, let's just say, not the best 2 districts in the state.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you win the quarterfinal. It's pack your bags for Columbia. But that's one of those things. Platte County goes and loses to Webb City 2 years ago in the semifinals, and probably was good enough to win a state championship, depending on the matchup in the finals. And this team would beat this team up and down the field.
Yeah.
But this team may have a shot to go to the state championship game.
Guy you'd mentioned before in a Simone talk, Jake Van Dyne out of Liberty North.
Yeah, just a consistent guy.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, just putting up solid numbers every single week, and he really just triggers what they do. And Liberty North playing good defense and just looking a lot like a Greg Jones team looks. They play good special teams. They play good defense. They're smart on offense. They can run the ball. They can throw it. They're balanced when they need to be. And Van Dyne's really as a senior quarterback. That's one of those great things. If you got a good senior quarterback and can really lead your team, it just gives you. I don't want to say it's worth one more win. But if you've got a guy who's played 2 or 3 years, it could be worth 1 or 2 more wins.
Yeah,
just
maybe
every
more
year.
than that. Absolutely.
Just because getting people in, you're always got new kids in there, getting people in the right spots, making sure that the right, when the play's called, the kids know where they need to be and that kind of stuff. And, some people aren't good at that no matter if they've started for 3 years. I mean, it's just, but some kids are really good at that and have that kind of coach mentality. And that's a guy who's really just kind of stepped forward his senior year. He's been getting better every year, and it's really showing.
And on the Missouri side, receiving-wise, who's stood out to you from those stat leaders?
Well, Ramon Shelton from Staley is having a great year. They're really throwing. Dawson Parks, their quarterback, has played well. And, of course, Gage Warren. Those two guys played each other last week. Warren from Suchanik is the quarterback from Park Hill South.
Well said, yeah. Good,
yeah,
good.
I had to get through there. But then, you've got Luke Grimm from Ray Peck's really good. Jalen Noel is a guy who's a huge, big play guy, can burn up and down the field, and that's definitely someone to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
And those are kind of your top dogs.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good receivers out there. Platte County's got a couple. They always do. So.
Shocker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's look ahead to this week. We've got number of good games once again. When will they be played? We're not exactly sure on that.
At some point.
Thursday, Friday, early Friday, late Friday, Saturday. Who knows? But let's talk about the matchups here. I'll begin with Rockhurst and Blue Valley. I don't know how great of a game that's going to be, but I just love the interstate matchups, and I know Rockhurst is literally a stone's throw away from Kansas, but it's a Kansas v. Missouri matchup, and I always like to get a good gauge of who's got the best football that year, or how much better is one side than the other, and I think we get those in the handful of games we see from Kansas and Missouri.
Well, last year was 42-7 Rockhurst, and there's a lot of different players off of both of those teams. New starting quarterback Jake Wolf at Blue Valley, starting tailback at Blue Valley, and they've got some different players off the team, and I think Blue Valley is better suited in a better position this year than they were last year. Last year they were really banged up coming into this game. Rockhurst offensively isn't a juggernaut, but they know what they want to do. They want to run the ball and then throw over the top. And Blue Valley is, he said, that they're playing pretty well since the Aquinas game. They've done a pretty good job in their defensive backfield. They're going to be tested with those play action passes. The big test is going to be Blue Valley's offense and their ability to move the ball against the Rockhurst defense. It's really, really fantastic, and they're big, and their linebackers play really well, and their defensive backs are very. I mean, that's one of the parts of that Rockhurst program that I don't know if anybody, if you don't pay attention to it, and I'm not saying you should go spend time watching film on Rockhurst D-backs. Rockhurst D-backs are some of the best, well-coached, well-schemed defensive backs. In fact, it won them a state championship in 2010 on their defensive back play. And so that's just a part of their game that they take pride in. And you see it. You talk about Platte County and their passing game. Certain coaching staffs, there's certain areas that they excel in, and that's one of them. And
Seven, he wasn't a defensive back, right? He's a defensive lineman.
Assistant Coach
right?
Berg, whose son played at Northwest, was a defensive back for them, and he played at Northwest on a national championship team. Coach Berg has coached that position group for a long time, and it's one of those things. And it's finding the right kids. The toughest thing to play well in high school football, in my mind, is defensive back.
You think?
Because it's a difficult position at every level, and to understand what you have to do on the high school level, even especially now that teams throw a lot more, it's so easy to have a kid who's very athletically talented, very smart, not look good. Because especially when you're watching pros who are making millions of dollars get made look bad. Yeah. That's going to happen on the high school level, because then you factor in the confidence things that go along with it, and the level of toughness you have to play in that position is one of those things I think is highly underrated. And I think it's one of those things that when you see good defensive backfield play in high school, it stands out.
Yeah, it does. Another game, Lee Summit West and Staley. That'll never not be a good game, right? Is this one at Staley?
This is at Staley. Okay. It's Thursday night. This is a test for Lee Summit West. The last time they played a really good defense like Park Hill, they got beat up a little bit. And Staley's defense is playing really well. Now, they gave up some more points last week than they had to Park Hill South. And I think that says a lot about Park Hill South. They gave up 21 when they've been giving up about 7, with the exception of Kearney, who got, I think, a defensive touchdown in their game when they scored 19. Offensively, I mean, their defense has not given up. They were giving up about a score a game, and they gave up 21 last week to Park Hill South. So this is going to be a test of the offensive line of Lee Summit West and how they handle the front seven of Staley. And defensively for Lee Summit West, Staley, they're not running the ball like they have. They've got 3 or 4 different guys, and they use them in 3 or 4 different ways. They kind of each have their own little thing they do. But Dawson Parks and Ramon Shelton, the rest of that offense, they can flat out chuck it, and they're getting down the field and getting a lot of yards. So it's a matchup that Lee Summit West is probably, for the first time in a while, coming in as a marked underdog in this game.
Yep. Smaller school matchup: Lincoln Prep and Pim Hill. Are we both Class 3 in this one?
Lincoln Prep's Class 4.
Class 4 and Pim Hill's Class 3.
Yeah.
Both 4-0 teams though.
Yeah, and it's turned.
And that's the homecoming you mentioned.
Yeah,
for
homecoming
Pembroke.
for Pembroke, and this is one of those games that Lincoln Prep is looking at, saying we've won games in our league. We've gone over and played KCK teams, and we've beaten them. We've got to step outside of our league and beat a quality program. Pembroke Hill's that, and it has turned into, in the last 15 years, kind of a city rivalry. They're not that far from each other, and they play each other every year, and it's gone back and forth. There's been some years that Lincoln Prep has won this game, but Pembroke Hill, the last few years they've been up, they've won this game, and they're off to, they were undefeated in the regular season last year, and they're undefeated right now, and so this is a big test for Lincoln Prep. I've got Lincoln Prep as the favorite coming into this game.
Yeah.
Like I had him as the favorite last year after talking to Sam Knopic, and he talked me into the fact that Lincoln Prep was really good, and so I picked Lincoln Prep, and then Pembroke Hill beat him by 2 or 3 touchdowns. So I told him this time, I was like, I don't know if I want to listen to you because you talked me into the other way last time. And he goes, well, we came out and played well. So. But I think Lincoln Prep's, they're deep and they're good. Howard Brown, they're 260-pound quarterback / defensive lineman.
Jeez.
And he runs the ball, and he throws the ball. I was out of practice, and I saw him some last year. Went out of practice to start the season, and he throws a beautiful football. And when I was talking to Coach Knopic, he goes, you wouldn't think a kid that looks like that can throw the ball like that. He goes, I'd almost rather have him throw it because when he gets ahead of steam, I don't know if we can tackle him when he's running it. But he throws a great football, and their offensive line play is much improved this year. So Lincoln Prep is a team that's trying to break out of that inner city, thing, and they're, they've got the numbers, they've got a good coaching staff, they've got good players. There's good enthusiasm around their program. They're getting ready to launch their home field. They'll have blue turf next week. That's cool. Next week is the opening of that. The Chiefs are putting some sort of statue out there. I'm assuming we all will be there. It's some sort of representation. 41 and PrepsKC will have some complete coverage of that, and it's really, and it sits on the side of the old municipal stadium. So I mean, those kids are going to get to play where the Chiefs played and the Royals played and the Kansas City A's played, and it's a neat deal. So I think you're seeing, if there's, they're getting better on both sides of the state line in the inner city schools. The Lincoln Prep is the first one that looks like maybe they can take that step forward.
Awesome. Any final thoughts here on Snap Tackle Pod?
Oh, well, we'll see what the weather does. And
oh, man.
We'll keep an eye on that and stay, best way, follow us on Twitter.
Yeah.
At PrepsKC, we'll get all that information out to you.
Yeah, we'll try to have that updated, too, on the website at 41 Action News, kshb.com. We'll try to keep you up to date on all the games, when they're being played, if they're being moved, if they're staying the same, all that stuff. Dion, thanks so much, man.
Hey, it's always fun.
All right, thanks so much to you as well for listening to Snap Tackle Pod.